Today on the It Is Written program, we continue our study of the Ten Commandments. So let me ask you to get your Bible and a piece of paper and a pen and join us. It Is Written begins right now.
It has stood the test of time. God's book, the Bible, still relevant in today's complex world. It is written, sharing messages of hope around the world.
Welcome to another It Is Written program, and today we continue our study of the Ten Commandments. We have made our way down to the 8th commandment. Now, before we get into that, let me welcome my special guests. Well, one you already know, it's Dr. Alberto Timm. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us. Just why don't you remind folks of what it is that you do in South America?
I am the Dean of the Latin America Adventist Theological Seminary, and it's a multi-campus seminary. So we have 7 schools of theology down there.
Well, thank you. I know you're a very busy man, and you've agreed to join us here, and we appreciate that very much. And we also have joining us for the 8th commandment, Pastor Allan Chichester, who is a pastor here in the greater Toronto area. Pastor Allan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Why not introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about where you were born and where you're working now.
I was born in Guyana, South America. That's the only English-speaking country in South America. I was educated in Trinidad, Jamaica, and Michigan at several of our Adventist institutions. I'm currently the senior pastor of the Toronto West Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is a church of over 1,000 members located at 1621 Albion Road in Etobicoke. And it's a joy to pastor that church, and as we begin, it's a blessing to be here. And praise God for the ministry of It Is Written Canada, and let me say hello to all those who are viewing this great program from South America, the Caribbean, and members of the Toronto West Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Well, thank you. So any of our viewers that are out in the West End, check out Pastor Allan at the Toronto West Seventh-day Adventist Church. Well, we are, I guess we can get into what we're here to do, right? The 8th commandment, verse 15 of Exodus 20. You shall not steal. Seems pretty straightforward. I'm going to, ask, do we, some people are watching saying, well, do we really need a commandment to tell us that it's wrong to steal? Doesn't everybody know that it's wrong to steal? Isn't that just a little bit redundant? What do you gentlemen think to that? Does everybody know it's wrong to steal?
Well, let me just begin saying that the commandment really implies the right of possessing property.
Oh, okay.
In other words, for me to steal something, it should belong to somebody
else.
Yes, exactly. And so, by saying that we should not steal, at the same time, the commandment really reinforces the right of possessing property, as I mentioned.
Well, that's an interesting sort of take on that. So, obviously, you cannot steal unless someone else has ownership.
Exactly.
Of it.
But at the same time, for somebody to own something, it should be, in other words, somebody should really own something in a right way. Because I can really get something from other people in a right way, the biblical fashion, or I can use devices to build up my property in an unbiblical fashion.
So whereas it is okay to own property and own things.
Yes.
That's implied here. But the acquisition of those things has to be done through proper means, and one of which is not stealing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Pastor Allen, what's your take on?
Well, I think the commandment is necessary
Okay.
because of the context in which the commandment was established. If we go back in the biblical paradigm, the first sin originated with covetousness, but it was manifested by stealing. It was an act of stealing that put us into the context in which we're in by picking of that fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. By the time we get to the statement of the commandment here in this passage, and I know that Dr. Timm spoke to this in a previous program, we see the commandment being given at Mount Sinai in a context in which people could steal. They could steal property, they could steal persons. We see the establishment of that commandment beginning by God identifying himself. So this commandment gives us a picture as to who God is. God is a loving person who is interested in the well-being of his creatures and who wants his creatures to have possessions in a right way and to enjoy those possessions. So the commandment begins by God saying that basically, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. So it establishes who God is, his very nature. I am the eternal God, as Dr. Timm said earlier, Yahweh Elohim, which specifies we're talking about the eternal God. And then it establishes what is necessary for this postmodern context, a sense of belonging. The children of Israel belong to me. I am the Lord your God. And then it establishes now the relationship with God and Israel, that he's the one who brought them out of the land of Egypt, so that it is a redemptive relationship. And so this commandment is descriptive of the lifestyle of people who understand that they have been redeemed by God from a life of sin, since Egypt, though it was literal for them, is symbolic of a life of sin in the Christian context. The second thing about this commandment is that the commandment is prescriptive. It prescribes how I can enjoy life to the fullest. And I enjoy life to the fullest by being an industrious person, by acquiring property and belongings in the correct way, and by respecting the property of other people. You know, I think back to my days as a student, when I was a student at University of the Southern Caribbean. One summer I went to the beautiful British Virgin Island of Tortola in order to canvass, to do some colporting work. And it's a beautiful island, and oftentimes in our hurry to get out, to earn money in the correct way in order to go to school, we often would forget the door and the gate open. And we would return home and we would discover that no one had entered the premises. And soon we realized that we could sleep in this beautiful island without having to worry about our possessions being taken from us. What a beautiful planet this would be if everyone could go to bed at night and not worry about having to have a door or a key or an alarm system to protect our possessions.
Isn't it kind of ironic that here we are in the so-called sophisticated Christian Western world, and we live behind reinforced doors and deadbolts and keys? We shouldn't have to. Not in the Christian West. I mean, and we do that because, in fact, this commandment here is not being observed.
You know that Kierkegaard, the famous philosopher, he used to say, how can it be that the Christianity of the Christendom is so against the Bible?
Wow. What a commentary on Christianity. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I'm not going to, I won't head over to my neighbor's house and steal their car or, steal their lawnmower. So I'm okay. I mean, really, I really don't have the desire of that. So I'm okay. Like this one's a piece of cake for me. Easy. Not a problem. Is that all that's implied here?
No, because there are other forms by which you can stay at home today. It is said that back in the time when this commandment was given, men stole with swords. Now we steal with our pens. We can steal via the internet.
Oh.
There's internet fraud, and of course there's identity theft. So you can be at home and still you can steal just by being online.
Boy, you know, just when I thought I had this thing licked, here you guys come and put a whole new dimension on here. Now, you know, makes it much more
Are you
complicated.
touching also copyrights?
Yes, yes. There's copyright infringement, and by whatever mean one seeks to defraud or to dispossess another person of what belongs to that person. This commandment speaks towards stealing people's repetition. There's a famous poem, and I can't place the author of the poem, that says, "He who steals my purse really robs me of nothing, but he who steals my repetition steals me of everything." And so this is a timeless commandment in that it speaks to time. In fact, the context in which this commandment was given, within the Sinai context, there is the Ten Commandments, and then there are several case applications that come after the Ten Commandments. One of them is found, for example, in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 16.
Okay. He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or he is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death.
So in their context, kidnapping is an act of stealing. And we live in a world in which people are still being kidnapped. And so there's the case application that applies how stealing is supposed to be handled in their context. Of course, we have our own context of dealing with it, and then there's another case application in Exodus chapter 22, verses 1 through to 6. So it's very interesting how the Redeemer outlines and describes the life of the redeemed community, and then gives case examples later written by Moses as to how this commandment could actually be applied. So Exodus chapter 22, verses 1 to 6 also speaks towards the application of this commandment about stealing.
That's kind of interesting that there would be these little additional notes there, additional application of this commandment. So, you know, for some of our viewers that are saying, well, listen, what I understand you guys saying then is that it goes beyond just me stealing somebody else's possessions. Particularly, I thought was quite interesting. You mentioned stealing someone's reputation, stealing their good name, and that has can overlap, in fact, into the next commandment, right? Into the ninth commandment, where it talks about bearing false witness against our fellow man, right?
Yes. Technically, it's very hard to break one commandment without breaking many of the others. The structure of the commandment, of course, the Ten Commandments, inform us that the first four speaks to our relationship with God, speaks towards religion, and the last six speaks to our relationship with our fellow men, speaks to morality. And within that structure, of course, there's the commandment that protects the sanctity of life, thou shalt not kill, and then the commandment that protects the sanctity of marriage, thou shalt not